All right. There
Got
we
it.
go. Okay, so this one is about creativity. Had a fun time preparing this little one. Um, Obviously, I don't think you can be a master in this. I don't know. Maybe you can, but all I can do is just share with you, what I do um, to get some creative thinking going. So it's really just going to be a very personal journey, and hopefully you can get something out of it. So the first thing you have to do, I hope Howard's on the call, is you have to use white on your slides. Howard was moaning about white on WhatsApp now, so I just wanted to make sure he understands that that's very important. Okay, so firstly, are you sure? Are you sure you want to become a creative thinker? Be careful what you wish for, right? You'll walk into things, honestly, that happens, and you'll daydream a lot. Like ask my wife, that happens a lot. I'm often in my own little world, and I think it's because I just take in everything, and it's actually a challenge sometimes because when there's a lot of noise, it's very hard to take in everything. So you end up daydreaming and almost escaping into worlds, and it's fun, but it can also be a problem. And you'll do crazy things. I enjoy it, but there's a lot of times that it doesn't work. You can ask Tom. We've been in some weird workshops, and then I just start doing something different. And a lot of times it's a disaster, but you always learn something, and it always works out in the end, actually. So you have to be comfortable that you'll be doing some crazy things. And, people will unfriend you. That happens. I can't prove that that's because you're a creative thinker. It's probably because of some other reasons, but it happens. It's happening. You'll start using words like super. I've realized I use that a lot. Just by checking my recordings. So I think that's probably also a side effect. So just you're warned, right? There are some side effects. So what's the recipe? For me, it's pretty simple. And it's the first time I'm thinking about this, right? It's the first time I had to prep a presentation, and someone asked me, how are you creative? How do you do that? And I had to do some soul searching, like, is there really a pattern? Is there something that I can share that I think people can learn? And the answer is absolutely yes. I think you can learn it. And maybe it's not even a learn, it's more of a habit, things that you do continuously that'll help. So the three things that I came up with is the first is inspire, to be inspired, to just get inspiration from everything around you. I think that's a massive part of it. Tinker is something that you can do that's one of those habits that can help you become more creative. And the final one is about sharing. And I have a lot to say about that. So the inspiration one, I think, is best explained by this little piece here. We all know garbage in, garbage out. I'm not saying Netflix is garbage. Actually, there's some incredible art on Netflix, like honestly. But when we sit on the couch every night and we watch Netflix and we binge watch, we're in lockdown mode. We're in just leave the brain at the door. We're gonna shut down. We're gonna relax, which is fine. That's perfect. I do that a lot. It's just if that's all you do, that's what your brain's gonna be filled with. And it's going to be very hard for you to come up with creative thoughts because the only thing that you are taking in, is your shutdown time. So I think this is really what it's about. So the kind of things that inspire me. So I thought I'd start off by just showing a bit of how my mind works. I walk in Melrose Arch, and these are the kind of things I see. I see a normal bench, and yeah, that's fine, that's cool. And then you walk a few steps further and you see the same bench, but in a different way. And it's still practical. It's very interesting for me to see these kind of things. And I'm always on the lookout. What can inspire me? Because there's someone behind this, right? This means that whoever was in charge of putting benches down at Melrose Arch, for some reason thought, let's get creative. Let's not do it like anyone else. And you can find this inspiration. You'd be surprised where you can find this inspiration. I saw some other things, because when you have a creative mind, I think you always you also have a very good ability to see what's wrong, especially when you're a software developer. So there, that little, I found it very weird that there's roofs on the ATM, but on your bike rack, there's no roof there. And sometimes, you still have to have a bit of practicality, but you tend to see those things as well. I saw this little sign and I thought, yeah, that's just beautiful. I don't just take in the signs, but sometimes when something's beautiful for you, look at what they're doing and try and ask what makes it beautiful. So I looked at each of these. I'm like, what's the font they're using? They're mixing the fonts. They have interesting colors that they're using, and they're using it different ways. They're like playing with gradients there, and a potato chip thing, and then a yellow and pink, and all these things you can just take in. And I think when you keep filling your mind with this and you really take it in, you don't just say, oh, that's beautiful, and you move on. When you do that PowerPoint presentation, you're going to remember, yes, those guys did that interesting pink yellow thing. How can I make that my own, and what can I do with it? So again, a little bit about this, we're trained to see what's wrong. And if you think about it, when you're looking for a bug in code, actually 99% of the code's working. I mean, we all have this experience. You're looking for that bug, and when you actually fix it in the end and you look at your commit that's going back, it's often like maybe even a character or just one line of code that does the fix. So we're so trained to look past the whole the entire 99% of what's working, and we have to go and find this 1% that's not working. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that really makes you a good detective. But I do think you must realize that you can train your brain then to say, I have this tendency. I can zoom in on this one thing that no one else sees that's wrong, and try and flip it around and say, all right, can I see this one thing that no one else sees that's actually collaborative, that's right? So you have that brain power, and you can just train yourself to use it a little bit differently. So people inspire me. I have a lot of people who inspire me. This one guy, when I think of creativity, I think of Rob Bell. So disclaimer, a religious guy if you want to go look him up. But he has all sorts of interesting things that he's doing. This one he's done lately. I saw this one, I think last week or so, that one of the bike. So what he said was his dad has so much interesting stories to tell, but he didn't grow up obviously in the Instagram age. So he wouldn't share these things. No one would know. And it's this whole world that's almost lost to us, because we're only consuming Instagram and Facebook and those kind of things. So what he said is he's going to role play his dad and the kind of things that his dad used to do, and then just show the world what life his dad is living. He does strange things like this all the time. One time I saw him do a presentation, and similar to that bench, it's actually where I got the bench idea. He just showed photos of his life, and he just explained how his mind works. And he said he had no idea if it's going to work. And he works this way. He would say, like, let's just rent out a whole auditorium, and I'm going to do this. And then he just does it. He doesn't worry about how crazy it is. And it ended up working. It really worked. And a lot of his stuff that he does also doesn't work. He has some cool audio. It's not really an audio book. It's just like an audio snippet or something, like how to create, how to tell a story, how to be curious, all these things. You're just listening to him talk. He's very creative. So, I mean, find your own people. Just be out there. Look at podcasts and all those kind of things, and you'll find creative people out there. There's some insane inspiration, and maybe there's someone that clicks for you. So people, definitely, you must look at people. Is another one, and this is C.S. Lewis. So this is more about books. I've read this. He wrote Narnia, and he has a whole ton of books, and I just love his writing style. And there's the story about him. He's a English professor. So when you were in his class, there was this one guy that told me how it worked. He would always be late, and then the door would just bang open, and he would walk in, and he wouldn't say hello, nothing. He would just start talking and start giving the lecture. and he would, while he's walking down the aisle, he would continue just giving this lecture, and he would get to the front and just continues talking, and then almost at the end he would start walking out, talking, then the door would just close and he's out. That's the kind of weird guy he was. And I think it's because he just had so much to say. And if you read his autobiography, you realize why he has so much to say. It's because he read everything, basically. I think he read all the books because he is so inspired. He just has so much to say. And that's just a good example of how inspiration and being inspired can lead you on. Poems. I love reading poems. I think it's just one of the most beautiful forms of art. This one maybe you'd recognize, right? There's a time for everyone if they only learn that the twisting kaleidoscope moves us all in turn. There's a rhyme and reason to the wild outdoors when the heart of the star-crossed voyager beats in time with yours. It's amazing. This is Can You Feel the Love from Lion King? Elton John. His words is just insane. So, I mean, next time you're in a bookshop or something, go and look for one of those poetry, I don't know what you call it in English. In Afrikaans, it's a bundle. It's just a bunch of different poets, maybe. There's all sorts of things. And just read it. I mean, these things are deep, it's great, and it's good inspiration. It really is. So, a little bit about my story. I used to be very into the arts. I wrote plays, I did some acting, I played piano, I did music, all sorts of things. And creativity was just like what I needed to do. But I studied computer science, right? It's like there's this Rubicon which thou shalt not pass. And this is how I saw the world. And there was one time when one of my friends, he's a psychology student, and he said, like, there's this thing I have to do for my class. I have to do a whole personality evaluation on one of my friends and analyze and all of that kind of things. And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I'll do it for you. So he did this whole personality test on me. And his comment at the end was, if you do not find a way to express your creativity when you move on and you go into the workplace, you're really going to be miserable. And I told him, I studied computer science, right? And it was funny back then because we did see it this way, right? It's completely different worlds. And the biggest learning in my life was that, no, it's more of a Venn diagram, actually. Actually, there's a lot of creativity that you can take into your work, and it's not different worlds. Here's some more inspiration. Reddit, I love Reddit. And there's a whole ton of things that I'm following there. If you want to use a social network, I think Reddit is the best. I'm sure you can get down to some rabbit holes in Reddit as well. But for me, it's inspiration. It is just insane. So I love woodworking, and I follow the woodworking channel, and the kind of things that these guys build, it's just amazing. I follow the Lego one, and it's just builders building all sorts of different Lego. There's this one called Room Porn, which is just interior decorators showing off insanely nice rooms. And I think the interior decorating use case, you see, I'm very computer sciencey. That use case is a very good example when you talk about inspiration, because this is what you do in your home, right? You walk through a shop maybe, or you walk through someone else's home and you see ideas. And then you bring that into your own home. And that's the principle. It's as simple as that. Blender is another one. So that's all about 3D modeling. It's the kind of things that those guys create. Often I have to look and I'm like, is this a photo or is this real? I just can't tell. It's so good. And sometimes it's completely abstract. Indie gaming, yes, that's another field. I think gaming is extremely creative. And just looking at these games that guys built, and it's like, often it's a one-man team that's doing it part-time for 3-4 years, and they just don't care how long it takes. They don't care how the graphics is now old. They're going to make something amazing, and the ideas that you see there again is inspiration. So listening is something I feel so strongly about, and it's something that we don't do enough. Is just listen, and it talks to that other part I said earlier, where don't just take something in, it's beautiful, and move on. Try to really take it in, and try to really take in what someone's saying, and listen to music, and just, broaden your listening skills. I think is important if you want to be inspired. Ask. So if you're asking more questions, you get the opportunity to listen even more. And if you're in the question mode, you're already in a mode where you can be inspired. If you're already thinking about what I'm going to reply, obviously you're not going to be in that right mode, and you're not going to be able to take in enough inspiration. So that's the point of this one. Here are all the things that I use. Music, podcast, just walk around in nature, books, plays, concert, games, poems. Just find new and new things every day that can inspire you. And that's a big part of becoming a creative thinker, is you need to inspire yourself. Here's a very good example. Everyone knows him from Mythbusters, Adam Savage. If you go to his YouTube channel and you look at the one-day builds, that's amazing. And you will see the way he talks. You can just see the passion, and you know that this guy is inspired. Forrest Gump, another example that I love. I love the movie, but I also love the character. This grass scene was really almost one of my mantras. I like doing it so much, I cut that grass for free. It's a guy that's an example of he's here. He's not somewhere else. I'm not talking about daydreaming now. I'm talking about you doing some odd task and just hating it and not being there. Any task can be something where you can have your mind be there. Because if you are there and you enjoy the craft, doesn't matter what it is, that's where that inspiration can start flowing through. So that's a nice little movie if you want to rewatch that. Okay, so now we're at the tinker part. You have all of this inspiration, and even if you're 100% inspired, this little page here scares you, right? It's a blank page. It's the start of something. You have this inspiration, and oftentimes when I look at this and stare at this page, I can immediately be demotivated, because now where do I start? Yes, I have all these things, all these ideas, and I can't get it onto the paper because it's just too intimidating, this blank page. And everyone knows I say this. I think the answer is just start. So just start is a difficult thing to do. It's not intuitive, because you want to almost have the full picture before you start. That's what we all want to do. But if you just start without worrying about that and practice, I think you'll get to something amazing. So here's an example of my little finance thing. If you ask someone like Peter, you'll know I've been working on this probably for, 9 years now or something. So it started by just you have money coming in, you probably need some kind of budget or something to look after it, And that's the only thing I knew. And I had all these ideas of what it could be, but I'm like, I don't know where to start. So what I did is I just let's just copy paste all of my transactions that I have on the bank into Excel. And I just did that, and I left it. And then later I returned and I'm like, okay, what can we do with this? Maybe do some Excel charts, and then you just play around, because you can see on the Excel they have different kind of charts on there, right? And I know you're laughing because of chart, that's fine. So you just choose different ones, and you're just like, what does this thing do? And what does that thing do? And then you start seeing things. You might be seeing some things in the data. You're like, why did my wife spend so much? Why did this happen? This little graph is interesting. Maybe I can use it somewhere else, And just because you're starting and you're starting to click and your arms are moving and you're actually doing things, ideas and the inspiration can now naturally start flowing out. And in the end, I built this whole website here that can scrape F&B transactions and pull it in and draw graphs, and you can budget, and it was completely useless. It literally doesn't help at all. It was fun, but it doesn't help, because what do I really need? What I really need actually on the right-hand side is I need someone to tell me and my wife, this is the current balance, because once you're married, you have two accounts, and it's complicated. So this is the balance, and this is what still needs to go off, and this is what you have maybe per week and maybe per day. That's really all you need. That is what you need, and that's that's the actual thing that was useful. This whole other thing turned out to be not that useful. It's useful when you look at it, but you can't, like, practically, it doesn't change the way you spend. And what I realized then later is now I have this asset. I built this website and I know I have it. It's like stored in my brain. I have this thing. So then another challenge came my way, and it was there's new technologies all the time, and I don't know how to learn them well, because you can do videos and training and it helps a little bit. But what you really need to experience how it feels to develop with that language. And that's when I got the idea, wait a minute, let's take that asset I created ages ago, and I think ASP.NET or something, and let's try and recreate that thing, because it was pretty difficult. I realized this whole finance thing can be pretty difficult to build. So let's rebuild it in a new language. And that became so much fun that I repeated that process a few times, and I rebuilt this thing a few times. And I really learned that this thing I created is useless for my finance situation, but it's so good for just learning languages. I mean, who would have thought at the beginning that that would be the use case for it? So even failed kind of tinkering can eventually lead into something. So that's the process I've been doing for a long time now. I have managed to eliminate a lot of the fear of just starting. I wanted to get into woodworking. And again, do you set up your whole shop? Do you do this? Do you do that? I'm like, nah, screw it. I'm just going to buy a table saw. And I bought this thing, and now I have it. And whenever there's a project, I'm like, hey, I have a table saw. Maybe I can do something with it. And then once you start building stuff, you're like, I actually want to build this thing. And maybe let's go YouTube, like table saw stuff, and you learn. And then that just flows, you know. So just take that first step. I think the most important step is that first one. I took up drawing, and that was just because I got an iPad and I had a pen. I'm like, well, obviously you should draw with this thing. And I tried, and turned out that I can do it. And it was great. That's actually a picture or a drawing of my dad. So be curious. I think it's important when you tinker. When you tinker, it's about seeing something and saying, how does this work? And what can I do with it? And what other things can I do with it? That's a bit of a key to just starting. It's just curiosity. All right, now we get to the last one here, and that's sharing. And this is a bit more difficult to articulate, so I'm going to try. You know, don't be afraid to feel is interesting, because we don't like being vulnerable, right? And there's actually this anxiety tip, although if you really do suffer from anxiety, please listen to your doctor and not me. But whenever you get like a panic attack or something, a weird technique is to say, let's not run from it, but, you know, let's just feel it and almost float outside of your body. And it's getting very airy-fairy, but just listen me out. You almost float outside of your body, and you're like, what is happening to me? My hands are shaking. All right, let me feel it. Let me feel how my hands are shaking. My heart's pounding. What else is happening to me? This is happening, that is happening. And it's an interesting feeling when you have anxiety. So let's make it real. Maybe you are about to give a presentation at the office team meeting, and you're shaking and you're feeling it. When you say, let me feel it, you are actually moving into the moment. And that's what you need to let creative thoughts come out. You need to be in that moment, and all of these anxiety feelings and so forth sometimes feels like a blocker. But when you really feel it, you realize that, yes, I'm learning something while I'm feeling. And when you start training yourself, you start become more comfortable being vulnerable. And that will make you take more risks. That will make you do a bit more crazy things. And once you've break through that little mindset, I think creativity flourishes. I really do. So here's a golf ball. When you play golf, and it's well known that when you're a beginner, usually you see water. Water just becomes this new thing for you, right? You're scared of it. And you can't play golf when you're like anxious and all your muscles are strained and all sorts of things. And why does that happen? It's because you see this water and you're immediately thinking about, I'm going to hit the ball into the water. And what I've learned here is that I don't know if the body really knows how to react to a brain's negative and positive thoughts. I think the body just says, well, that's a thought. You probably want me to do that, so I'll do it. So if you're thinking about the negative thing, the water, the body doesn't know, oh, you meant I should not hit in. No, it doesn't work that way. It's just like, what's your focus? Oh, the water? Okay, I'll make sure I do that for you. I'll execute. So it's simple. Don't think about the water, right? It's actually not that simple, because what people do is they're like, don't think about the water, don't think about the water. That doesn't work. What you must do is you must pick a spot. It must be small, like a little branch on the grass. Like that. I'm going to think of that. And that's the key in golf. So I'm moving to something, you'll see. When you want to let creativity flow, you have to have that kind of mindset. And I think there's 3 ways that you can be. Let's think of it like you're in a brainstorming session. There's 3 attitudes, 3 positions that you can take, right? The first one is shame. So what do I mean by that? So you're in the room and people are sharing, but you are thinking of the negative. What are you thinking about? You're thinking about me. You're thinking about, how can I not be shameful, right? How can I not hit into the water? How can I not shame myself? Is this idea that I'm going to share good enough? What will they think about me, right? So you've put up a shield. You have a bit of an ego shield there. Like, I can't be shamed. I can't be shamed. And guess what the brain's going to do? It is going to focus on that, and you are not going to be able to share out. You're not going to be able to be creative and let the thought run, because your focus is on yourself and how I must protect myself and my ego. So that's the one attitude you can be in. The second attitude you can be in is the shouting. So that's what I call the red triangle. So you can be, I am just going to overpower this meeting and I'm going to talk all the time. And again, that's actually a me focus, because you're continuously thinking about, what can I share? Oh, this is great. Everyone needs to hear this. I have this thought. I have that thing. That's also not a good space to be in when you want to be creative. And don't think this means it's always the people who are the loudest in the room. There's a lot of people who are completely silent, and I think I'm that a lot of times. You're completely silent, but inside you're shouting. You're like, no, that's not a good idea that you have there. This is not great. I don't think that's going to work. You're just shouting inside. Again, that's not an attitude or a position you can be in if you want to be creative. Where you want to be in is that bottom one, which is the sharing. So how does that work? So that means you're in a listen mode. You're really listening to what other people are saying, but you're not making it about yourself. You're making it about the actual topic you're talking about, and you're taking all that inspiration that you have and you're using it to say, all right, this little topic, this thing we're talking about, yes, this is a good idea. I saw that on Reddit the other day, and that makes me think of this, and you share it as a gift. And you don't care who's going to use it or who's going to think something about you. You see, you're not me-focused anymore. It's a subtle little change, right? So you have to try and go think about this and observe yourself in meetings and brainstorms to really understand what I'm saying here. Think about that golf ball thing. It all comes together. And I think sharing is the key. If you think about sharing and giving, if you have that mindset, that is the mindset that you have to be in to be able to let that creative force actually contribute and help. So you need to be inspired so that you have this whole big toolbox of things. You need to tinker, because that creates a habit of being creative. And then when you are needed or required to be creative, you have to be in the right mode. So that's the recipe for me. It's inspire, it's tinker, and it's share. Here's a short list just to close us off of things that I use, like actual podcasts that I listen to and so forth. The truth is, a lot of my stuff is non-work related. So I tried to share a few relevant things. There's a whole ton. I just jotted down a few. Maybe it's a good starting point for you. There's some podcasts on here, some cool books that I like, some people's biographies, Reddit subreddits I follow, some YouTube channels. So maybe that's just a start for you, and start getting off Netflix couch and maybe do one of these things instead. So I hope that this was helpful for you.